Well, hello everybody. This morning at 10 a.m, Ex-Tropical Cyclone Koji crossed the Queensland coast between Eyre and Bowen as a tropical low, and it did so having been downgraded. As you know, at times yesterday it had reached Category 2 winds and it crossed as a tropical low. The situation right now is the tropical cyclone warning has been cancelled. The real risk that remains is the one that we've been speaking about for some time, and that is the prospect of heavy rainfall continuing across a large area of our state and the risk of flash flooding that comes from that. I just want to touch on, to give an indication of some of the quantum of rainfall, and these are 24-hour totals to midday today, so it's fresh data. At Cattle Creek, which is west of Mackay, total of 360 millimetres in the 24 hours to midday. At Youngalla, 290 millimetres. And there's been large falls as well on the coast, and in many cases that heavy rain is continuing, and the warning remains for people to stay vigilant. I want to discuss some of our immediate priority areas, and these are the things which are obviously very important for people across that area. Rainfall is expected to continue south of Bowen to St Lawrence, and as I mentioned, that's an area south of Mackay, north of Rockhampton. A flood watch remains from Eyre all the way south to the Wide Bay Burnett and west to the Barcoo. Now that's a large area, but it is a big system, and because in many cases they're swollen catchments, there remains a real risk of that flash flooding, and therefore it's important that people just stay up to date, make sure that they, if you're in a low-lying area, that you do know your risks, and just stay safe on the roads. And as I have repeatedly said, the vast majority of people have conducted themselves in a really safe and a responsible way, but also in a great way of mateship, the way that people have worked with their neighbours and just more generally in the local area. And I just want to express my gratitude for that and in the way that Queenslanders always conduct themselves in these events. The real risk remains the risk of flooding. They are swollen catchments. And in the hours and in the days ahead, there's expected to be significant rainfall still to come. Sue from the Bureau will touch on that, but that is something that I'm keen to express. To give an indication, the highest wind speed, which was recorded as the system crossed the coast, or just before, about 9:30, wind gust of 113 kilometres was recorded at Hamilton Island. That's a significant wind speed, but again, the risk is of that heavy rainfall in that wide part of that area, and I continue to ask people to take heed of that. Other areas of focus. I want to start with transport. The Bruce Highway is cut. It's cut at Peters Flat, just north of Bowen. Moments ago, the update was that Gorganga Plains remains open, but as people know, that is a really low-lying area of the Bruce Highway, one that we're committed to fixing. But it's one of those areas between Bowen and Mackay, and we ask people to stay vigilant and stay up to date. All of that information is on the disaster.qld.gov.au website, and that is there in real time, as is a lot of the local information as well. Turning to bus services, services have been suspended in the Whitsundays, but they've resumed in Townsville, and that resumption was this morning. Ferry services, the barge to Palm Island from both Lucinda and Townsville isn't operating and won't do until tomorrow at the earliest, and again, if people check the website, we'll continue to update that information. To aviation, the Proserpine and Mackay airports are both closed at the moment. The Townsville one reopened moments ago, and people can continue to discuss their travel plans with their local airline. The North Coast Rail line north of Bowen is closed, and on the port front, Abbott Point, Lucinda, Townsville and Whitsunday ports are all closed at present. I just want to do a quick reminder regarding the local roads. As we get the information, we'll share it with people. The best source of truth is that disaster.qld website, and your local council's dashboard is also on there, and they update it in real time. The best source of messaging for things like roads is to listen and trust the locals and place your faith in them ahead of Google Maps. We really must stress that to people. The Deputy Commissioner will discuss this morning. We had a swiftwater rescue, which I believe was west of Bowen at Strathalbyn Road. A mum and 2 kids, and in a situation like this, I can't express how glad we are that they're safe and well. I always say, in a disaster, it's people that come first, and property can be replaced, people can't, and to know that people are safe and well means so much to us, and that is our first, second and third priority in an event, I can assure you of that. Just on electricity, just moments ago I had an update from Ergon. There is about 15,000 homes and businesses without power in that broader area. Got up to 18,000 about an hour ago, so it shows you that those workers are out there in the elements reconnecting already. I do want to thank them for that. It's a massive effort, and I'm confident that a number of those 15,000, you'll start to see them reconnected pretty quickly. And that's as a result of the fact that there was a lot of pre-positioning and work done, and I spoke to you ahead of the season about that. There are crews in Cannonvale and Bowen where there are depots, but there's also additional resources in Townsville and Mackay, and they'll continue to feed into that area. So I would expect those connections to occur at great speed, as we're already starting to see, and I do want to thank the workers for that. To telecommunications, the situation at Mount Low was restored, and we updated everybody yesterday about that situation. Theft at any time is pretty ordinary. Theft during a disaster that puts people at harm's way is the lowest of low, and I can assure you we are going to be chasing that person involved, and we'll be chasing them hard. And and I think most Queenslanders will respect that. To health, thank you to the health workers who continue to work in situations like this. At this stage, elective surgery will continue unless you as an individual who has a procedure at Mackay is contacted directly. There are some issues, for example, at urology, but you will be connected and contacted directly about that. If not, your elective surgery will happen tomorrow as planned. It's important we do as much of that as we can. And there's some incredible work being done at some of the smaller regional outposts, which are vital, and services continue there too. And again, thank you to the health staff on that. Turning to QBuild, we've had damage reported at the Mackay State High School and the Vacatia State School. That's a bit of roof damage. We have QBuild crews on the ground, and they will be going to do those assessments and making those repairs as soon as possible. And again, that's some good work there. On the maritime side of things, there's been some reports, and you've obviously seen some vision of vessels that have been damaged and onto shore, including places like Airlie Beach. Marine Rescue Queensland will be on the ground assisting people in every way, shape or form. The Deputy Commissioner will update you on that in a moment. And I just want to turn very quickly to the situation in Western Queensland, and obviously we'll continue to watch as the system moves west and the impacts that could have. The last thing we want to see is more rainfall in areas that have copped more than a year's supply in less than a week. But I've just had an update come through. We're currently at 71 surveys that have been filled out, and that means that the stock loss has gone past 45,500 head of cattle that have lost in this episode. I stress that's only the beginning, and that number will continue to grow. There is a number of people who've been impacted. They haven't had time to fill out a survey. We completely understand that. That number will grow, and I fear will grow by many times. And the economic impact for Western Queensland, because of how important agriculture is to underpin those communities, will be large. We're continuing to supply fodder, and we are also bringing in veterinary supplies to try to deal with things like bacteria and pneumonia, which is a real risk for beasts when they're standing in the water. We're doing everything we can to try to spare as many of those as possible and help those primary producers. And I just want people in Western Queensland to know that the event on the coast doesn't mean that we will take our focus off you for 1 second. You're important Queenslanders, and we're mindful of the impact that has happened out west, and we'll be there for you for the long haul. So finally, just to Queenslanders regarding this system. Queenslanders understand disasters better than anyone, and they understand the stages of an event. First it's the wind, and then it's the rain, and then it's the prospect of flooding. And we've seen the wind, and that's starting to dissipate. That rain is occurring, and we've seen large amounts of rain with more to come. And then there's the prospect of flooding. Queenslanders will handle that. They always do. We'll give the information as soon as we have it. And I just do ask if people can use that single point of truth, which is the Disaster Queensland website, disaster.qld.gov.au. We'll continue to update people, and I just want to thank overwhelmingly the people who have responded, and that's everything from the individuals who took the time to get ready, the emergency services staff who, at a time of year when many people get the opportunity to have a spell, they're there working. And I just want to thank everyone. The event's been handled very, very well to date, and I just want to thank everyone as we get ready for the next phase, which is a little bit more rain. Sue, over to you.
Thank you, Premier, and good afternoon, everyone. As we've heard from the Premier, Tropical Cyclone Koji weakened to a Category low before crossing the coast between Ayr and Bowen around 10 a.m. this morning. Ahead of Koji crossing the coast, it did produce a damaging wind gust of 113 kilometres an hour at Hamilton Island. And that follows a destructive wind gust of 133 kilometres an hour, of which was observed during Saturday afternoon when Koji was categorised as a Category 2 system. So just repeating, Tropical Cyclone Koji has now reduced to a tropical low. It is positioned inland about 70 kilometres to the west, northwest of Bowen. In regards to rainfall, in the last 12 hours, the highest rainfall we've seen recorded is around about 370 millimetres. So I'll repeat, that was in the last 12 hours, so that's some significant rainfall. And that was in the ranges to the west of Mackay at a location, Matty O'Neill Bridge in Cattle Creek. But more broadly, on the ranges to the west of Mackay in the last 12 hours, we've seen around 250 to 350 millimetres of rainfall. So that's some pretty significant rainfall in the Pioneer River catchment. So what are we expecting to happen over the next 24 hours? The low will continue to move south-southwest at a steady pace for around about 18 kilometres an hour. And it will continue to produce heavy rainfall and in some areas local wind gusts to around 90 kilometres an hour. So that's a damaging wind gust. We will see that continue into this afternoon, probably an easing of the winds later in the day today and into Monday. The types of rainfall totals that we are expecting are 6-hourly totals, a continuation of those 6-hourly totals of 800 to 150 millimetres, with 24-hourly totals 100 to 250 millimetres, where isolated totals up to 340 millimetres within the 24-hour period are possible. Most importantly, though, the system has the potential to produce locally more intense rainfall, which may produce life-threatening flash flooding. And that's the sort of rainfall that we're seeing on the Yungala Range at the moment. And we'll be very closely monitoring that. So the system has the potential to produce that today and into Monday. So where will that rainfall be focused today? Generally, areas between Ayr and St Lawrence extending inland, but we will see that rainfall shift further south and further inland over the next 24 hours as the remnants of Tropical Cyclone Koji continues to move west-southwest. A severe weather warning is current, and all the information in regards to rainfall, locally intense rainfall and those damaging wind gusts is captured in the severe weather warning, which I encourage communities to access on the Bureau's website. So in regards to flooding, and the Premier highlighted the broad areas of flooding that are currently occurring across the state and where flooding may occur within the next couple of days as this rainfall continues. A flood watch continues for areas from Eyre to St Lawrence, extending even further south to the Wide Bay area today. So that includes catchments of the Baffle, the Boyne, the Burrum Sherwell, extending southward. We've also extended the flood watch westward to include the Barcoo River. The further out in the days that we go, the higher the uncertainty in the rainfall, so we'll be closely monitoring that situation to understand if that rainfall will extend to more broader areas. So I urge communities to remain up to date on the flood watch messaging that's coming out daily. We have got significant flooding occurring in the northwest parts of the state, and there is a risk of, as the tropical low moves westward, that we can have further rain, or we can observe further rain in that area later into the week. So we're watching that one really closely as well, appreciating the sensitivities of that area and the floodwaters on the ground. In regard to flood warnings within the tropical low area at the moment, there's a major flood warning for the Pioneer River, where at the location of Morani we're expecting major flooding. Downstream at Mackay, river levels will rise, where at this point in time moderate flooding is forecast. But we'll continue to watch that rainfall and continue to update our modelling and update our flood warnings as required. Around the Pioneer, we've got the Don River catchment, in which we've got minor flooding continuing, and also in the Burdekin River catchment, where we're watching the lower Burdekin River for minor flooding also. So once again, I just urge communities to remain up to date with the products coming out of the Bureau, warning of the rainfall and the damaging winds through our severe weather and flood products. Thank you.
Good afternoon. So following on from Sue from the Bureau and the Premier, I would urge people still to take caution around this weather event. Although it has downgraded from a tropical cyclone to a tropical low, there still is risk, and that risk has been outlined by both the Premier and Sue from the Bureau. So we will still see those isolated falls, and I'll give you a briefing shortly on some operational jobs where we have seen creeks and rivers rise quickly, and that has resulted in first responders needing to respond to people in or requiring rescue. The State Disaster Centre, and as was mentioned earlier by the Premier and also the Bureau, will remain focused on response around that Mackay Whitsundays area, but we'll also be looking towards the Gemfields, Central Highlands, and then back up into the northwest area, which has already seen extensive rain. That activity will include preparedness activity, because there may be people into the future that could be at risk there again. But you have to appreciate that those people will have to know the risk for the areas that they are in, and also follow the warnings very, very closely. And also this may further place stock at risk as the rain moves through, even if those rainfall totals do start to drop down below those more significant levels. So in regards to operational activities that have occurred this morning, so off the coast of Cannonvale near Pigeon Island, around 9:28am this morning, a vessel took on water rapidly and sunk. Two men then had to enter the water and had to be rescued, although they also self-made their way to the shoreline. They were assessed by the Queensland Ambulance Service and were assessed as okay. A number of boat owners in that area have suffered boats breaking moorings as well, and a number of vessels have washed against the shoreline and are starting to break up against the rocky shoreline. We would urge people not to enter the water, in particular for those vessels that are now up against the shoreline. It is very dangerous. And as the Premier has mentioned, both Marine Rescue Queensland and Water Police staff are operating in that area to provide assistance where they can, but also to urge people not to enter the water in those areas, as we are still seeing fairly significant wave heights and also wind creating danger within that area. Further, in the area of Bogey, about 57 kilometres west of Bowen this morning, we had a female enter floodwaters in a vehicle. That female was accompanied by two children. Luckily, that person with the 2 children were able to self-extract and walk to a nearby homestead, whereby they were able to receive assistance. And again, this was a person who came upon a road closed area, entered details into Google Maps, and then Google Maps then took them down a side road which was unfortunately flooded. And as we're seeing, the updates within Google Maps are not up to date with regards to road closures and flooding, and as again was mentioned by the Premier and the Bureau, we're seeing rapid rises and heavy isolated falls. On those heavy and isolated falls at Finch Hatton, located outside of Mackay this morning, we saw a rapid creek rising which resulted in 2 males and 5 children becoming trapped within a residence there. At one stage, the water caused them to climb up onto tables within that residence. Fortunately, we saw some decline in water levels, and also first responders acting together with the community were able to extract one of those adults and the 5 children from that area of danger. Thank you very much. Concludes my briefing.
Thanks, Chris. Over to you guys. Thank you very much.
Given this has tracked a bit further south, is there any advice for South East Queenslanders?
To all Queenslanders, just keep an eye on the forecast. That flood watch area has now been moved south to include the Wide Bay Burnett, and we'll just continue to update it. And that's the best thing that people can do, is to stay well abreast of the situation. There is no doubt that the risk of flooding is really pronounced in some of those north and northwest areas, because they've had so much rain over a short period of time, and that means that there's got nowhere to go when you have those heavy falls. So that remains our really big focus. But as the system tracks south, or indeed as it starts heading west, people just need to stay up to date with that information, and they'll handle it as they often do.
In terms of potential flooding, how concerned are you for the Mackay?
Yeah, it's definitely where we're watching. We're definitely closely watching that area south of Bowen, because it's an area that's had a bit of rain, and in the last 24 hours it's had a lot of rain. So we had the Mayor of Mackay this morning join the State Disaster Management Committee, as we have the mayors in the regions do, and his advice was there's now nowhere else for the water to go. Those catchments are swollen, and on the back of that, every bit of rain proves a challenge, which is why people have to know the risk, know the area that you're in, prepare accordingly, and you find that people do a really good job of that. Our job is to make sure that information is given. You can see the kind of rainfall that there's been to have. In the last 12 hours, those totals north of 300 millimetres, they're challenging rainfall totals. It's what comes on the back of that can prove really life-threatening. So people have to keep their wits about them, which they do. And overwhelmingly, I have faith in people doing the right thing.
For those in that region already without power,
yeah.
How are they to keep up to date with that?
Yeah,
with
good.
that information?
Good question, and that's one of the reasons why ahead of the event we always say make sure you do those preparations, have your phone charged, and if you can have a portable charger as well. But the fact that we've already had several thousand people reconnected and we've still got rain occurring shows you the kind of level of dedication that those workers have, and I'm very confident that you'll see a large percentage of people reconnected in the next 24 hours. And I do want to thank the workers for that.
What's being done between the state government and the BOM to do with the flood gauge being online?
Well, we'll continue to take that case forward. And in the end, the Bureau of Meteorology, they put resources according to how much money they get. And that's why we'll continue to take up the case with the federal government to invest heavily in the Bureau. It is just so important that they do. Everything from radars to those rain gauges, it's life or death for people living in rural and regional Queensland. It really is. And I've been a loud and strong critic of that for a number of years. And I'll point back to over 10 years ago when I was in a very different role and there was a very different colour of political government in Canberra, and I was prepared to call it out then and I'll call it out now. There needs to be investment in the facilities that the Bureau of Meteorology have, because people rely on it. And when there's no gauges there and when the radar have vast areas that are missing, that means that there's a level of guessing that has to occur, and guessing is not good enough in an event. And that's why that investment has to be made. And we'll continue to call it out. I've got a duty for Queenslanders to do that, and I'll continue to do that. And I'm want to see that investment in those facilities.
Has the state government been briefed
No.
about this stuff?
No, and I'll repeat again, neither myself, the police minister, the recovery minister, or indeed Chris as state disaster coordinator were briefed. No.
So there's no sort of indication at this stage of when they'll be fixed?
Well, we'll continue to advocate for funding to be able to upgrade those gauges and that radar. That's important to us. It's important to every Queenslander, and that's my job is to look after the things that we control. And I do believe people have seen during this event how seriously we take this. The way that we've pre-positioned assets makes us in a far better position to respond. We have had senior police, firefighters, SES and ambulance, as well as volunteers and staff who have been prepared to go and mobilise and go into a community to be there waiting to help. And what that does is it bolsters the services and facilities that are on the ground. Now, the people who are there, they know the local conditions, they're very high quality people who work for those services, and this just brings in a little bit of extra horsepower to help them. And the roles were reversed a little less than 12 months ago when people from the north came to the south. So it is about making sure that you pre-position. We've put swiftwater rescue boats in place. We've put a medical chopper to be able to respond. We've got ergon workers across multiple depots who are able to go and help the locals there so people can get their power hooked up quicker. We've done a lot of that, and I addressed you before the season to say that we were taking it seriously, and we asked people to do the same, and overwhelmingly they have. So I'll look after the things that I'm responsible for, and I have to say our relationship with the federal government has been really good. And the fact that we were able to respond so quickly to things like fodder shows those kind of partnerships. Having the minister sit in on the State Disaster Coordination Centre and representatives from NEMA, the National Emergency Management Association, having them there on that call is why that relationship's working. But if there's a shortcoming in resources, and I believe there has been for the Bureau for a long, long time, I'm not going to sit silent when my state is in their hour of need without the information they need, and that's my job. And of course I've got to do that.
So on that, will communication processes between the state government and the Bureau be improved?
Well, the staff from the Bureau are here at the coalface working with us, and we couldn't be more pleased with that. But they don't control the resources and the money that needs to be there to improve rain gauges and radar. That's a responsibility of the federal government, and I'll continue to call it out, whoever the government is in Canberra and whatever format that takes. This is not an issue that's emerged in the last few months before the season. This is something that I've been repeatedly calling out in my many years in public life, and I'll continue to do it.
The Google Maps have led some people astray already. What is your advice to people travelling and stuff?
Look, Google Maps is a really important resource, just not during disasters, because they're headquartered a long way away, and you've got to place your faith in the hands of the locals on the ground who know, and that's our message. So I'll make that as a general comment. In terms of the comment about the mum and her children, I'm just genuinely so thankful and grateful that they were able to get to safety. Human life is worth more than anything, and I think that's why Chris's comments are so pertinent around, for example, those vessels. I understand why people would want to go and retrieve those boats, but your life is worth so much more than your boat, and we want people to be safe, and we want to support them, and the Marine Rescue and the Water Police will help in those retrievals, and we'll help people get back on their feet. We just want people to stay in one piece so they can. All right, guys, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. The Prime Minister said that he'd been in touch with you.
Yes, multiple times. Oh no, multiple times. Again this morning, yesterday, and look, what people want during a disaster is to see the levels of government working together for the common good, and overwhelmingly that happens. I've made a conscious decision to have the mayors who are impacted sit in on that meeting and comment and drive what's happening from on the ground, because they see it. I've had the LGAQ there as well. the Local Government Association, who represent all of them. I want that. Likewise, I want the federal government to have a seat at the table. And what people want from me at a time like this is to know that there will be those good working relationships, that we will go and help people, and we will together deal with the different stages. And obviously the first one is always the response. That's critical to save lives, and then we've got to flick the switch and go from response to recovery, to get people back on their feet, to repair things that need to be repaired, and I can assure you that's what will happen. Thanks very much, guys. Thank you.